A refuge is a place to escape, rest, and recharge before continuing a journey. A National Wildlife Refuge, rich in biodiversity, is a place to rest and recharge for wildlife and for us. As you follow the parade of life through the seasons, you'll find it's a place of constant change. Welcome to Edwin B. Forsythe National Wildlife Refuge. This wide open space amid the crowded Jersey Shore provides critical habitat for migratory birds. During the Great Depression, numbers of Atlantic brant dropped to near crisis levels. The preceding decades of market hunting and habitat destruction crippled many bird populations. And eelgrass, the primary food of brant, suffered from a disease along the entire Atlantic coast. Despite other challenges of the time, these birds were important enough to warrant the attention of Congress. In 1939, the refuge was established to provide life-saving habitat for wild birds. It was a turning point for wildlife. Thousands of animals now benefit every year from the preservation of this land. The refuge was named for Congressman Edwin B. Forsythe, a major advocate of environmental legislation. He helped lead the fight for the Endangered Species Act, which protects species like the piping plover. This tiny bird nests in our wilderness area at the southern end of Long Beach Island. It's one of the most important piping plover nesting sites in all of New Jersey. This protected beach is vital to their survival. There are hundreds of national wildlife refuges across the country that conserve important lands. It's the largest network of wildlife habitat in the world, and it's all managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. These refuges create a network of sanctuaries for birds to rest and refuel on their migrations. They also serve as critical habitat for many other plants and animals. Imagine being on a road trip much of your life, never stopping anywhere more than a few months. Your survival depends on finding reliable food and shelter everywhere you travel, in every season. This is the life of a migratory bird. For thousands of years, the Lenni Lenape Native Americans who lived in this area also traveled with the seasons to find adequate food and shelter. In summer, they migrated to the coast to gather fish, clams, and oysters. Wildlife also benefit from the marsh's bounty. Summers at Forsythe are brimming with color and humming with life. Let's follow the action. You'll discover nothing sits still for long. As vacationers return to the Jersey Shore, hummingbirds return to the fields and forests of Forsythe. Wildflowers are in bloom, and hummingbirds enjoy their succulent nectar. Diamondback terrapins lay their eggs and bathe in the summer sun. The marsh is more complex than it appears. It's a living, breathing organism that is wonderfully rich in biodiversity. These dynamic plant and animal communities create an incredibly productive habitat. The waters serve as nurseries and spawning and feeding grounds, which makes them a magnet for an assortment of water birds. Tides rise and fall, just as visitors come and go. Like the water running through it, the marsh is constantly changing. Forsythe's managed pools support a wider variety of wildlife than salt marsh alone. They produce additional food for wildlife, adding millet, smartweed, and other plants to the menu. It's August, time to migrate south, and wading birds gather in anticipation. Migrating shorebirds stop to fatten on tasty invertebrates at low tide, like kids in a candy store. In Forsythe's wetlands, egrets hunt for fish, while night herons hide from the summer heat. In late summer, goldenrod blooms on the refuge, just in time for monarch butterflies to arrive. It's one of nature's amazing relationships. Fall arrives at Forsythe, and shorebirds are flying south. In September, refuge staff raise water levels in the pools in anticipation of the ducks. The wildlife are grateful for the food. For the staff, it's an incredible privilege. They work hard to provide habitat for everyone. The hungry ducks gather in large flocks to feed on tasty plants, seeds, and invertebrates. The masses of wildlife attract predators like lions in the Serengeti. Ospreys and bald eagles hunt for fish, while peregrine falcons use their lightning speed to capture small birds. Crowds of water birds like black ducks and geese are drawn to Forsythe. People, too, have known about the bountiful nature of the marsh for thousands of years. Excellent hunting, fishing, and trapping attracted the first colonists to these waters, and those traditions continue today. In October, snow geese arrive from the far north, like snow falling on the marsh. The refuge changes from a spectrum of colors to shades of gray and brown as ducks arrive in increasingly greater numbers. More than 100,000 waterfowl can inhabit the refuge in early November. Winter takes hold. The refuge continues to provide abundant food for its visitors, unless it's buried under ice. When the refuge is frozen, many birds move closer to the ocean in search of open water. For the geese and ducks that remain, they dig for food once the ice melts. Imagine trying to make dinner with your food lodged in a freezer. Gulls dig in the marsh in search of fresh seafood. They tackle the challenge of cracking open shells with gravity. Wildlife Drive serves many purposes, but this is perhaps the most unusual. Even small birds make themselves at home in the winter cold, but they take cover in the forested uplands. Cardinals and sparrows feed on the bare ground, while a discreet hermit thrush hides in the limbs above. Robins make fast work of exposed food at a nearby watering hole. Since the refuge is essential for black ducks, it's important to check on their numbers. Volunteers help monitor various locations, while refuge staff set live traps to determine the health of individual birds. The forested uplands are busy with activity that is hard to see. Close inspection reveals compelling evidence. Out in the marsh, a pair of otters raided a vole nest and took off with the loot. The sight of red-winged blackbirds means spring is on its way. The refuge begins to thaw while buds open and plants come back to life. In late March, ducks continue their northward migration as beach nesting birds begin to arrive. Shorebirds and wading birds follow close behind, and you don't just see a few of them, you see them by the thousands. Peepers and other frogs announce the arrival of spring. It's mating season, and the rituals begin. Above the marsh, ospreys prepare their nest for a family. Another male tries to move in, but quickly decides to pass. In the marsh, a male tern successfully courts his lady. Near Wildlife Drive, a giant snapping turtle is king of the marsh. A handsome male wood duck attracts a mate. Butterflies find safety in the forested uplands. In May, the next generation of geese arrives under the watchful gaze of new parents. In spring, refuge staff lower water levels and expose mudflats for water birds to probe for food. This also stimulates a profusion of plants. As water flows out of the pools into the marsh, so too flow the fish. It makes for easy fishing near Wildlife Drive. And waiting overhead are Forster's terns. When they spot a fish, they plunge into the water with great speed and accuracy. This type of fishing requires energy and patience, but the reward is well worth the effort. If you look closely at the marsh, you may spot a few secretive birds. This habitat is ideal for snipe. They prefer open areas with low-lying plants for cover. They feed like a sewing machine, probing the marsh for food. And a snipe's bill is especially sensitive, allowing it to detect tasty insects under the mud. It's similar to bobbing for apples with a blindfold. Birds with equally impressive bills are sandpipers. And spotted sandpipers are just as solitary as snipe. They too feed on insects, plus crustaceans and other invertebrates. They are easily recognized by their teetering motion. One of the most elusive birds here appears at dusk, the clapper rail. Rails prefer the dense vegetation of freshwater and saltwater marshes for safety. It's similar to hiding in a giant corn maze. Occasionally, rails appear at the water's edge where insects are abundant. One thing is certain, these clever birds are more often heard than seen. The sun rises on Forsythe. It's May, and songbirds announce the start of a new day. Forests of pine, oak, and cedar host these spring migrants. Along with warmer weather, May brings insects, millions of insects. Fortunately, this dense population coincides with an influx of hungry birds. Warblers of all colors feast on an abundance of flies, ants, and caterpillars. This bounty of birds creates a tremendous opportunity for bird watchers and photographers. Forsythe is an excellent place for birding because of its unique location. It's in the middle of the Atlantic Flyway, one of 4 major routes for migratory birds in North America. This flyway absorbs primary migration routes and funnels birds directly to Forsythe. During the World Series of Birding each May, Forsythe is a major attraction. Birders crowd the refuge trying to log the most birds. Birding is quite popular, but visitors have many opportunities here to connect with nature. Our journey has come to an end, yet we've only scratched the surface. This refuge, where land meets the sea, protects extraordinary biodiversity. It's just as important to healthy plants and animals as it is to our survival and well-being. Whether you seek a place to escape or the excitement of a unique wildlife moment, you will find true wilderness here at Edwin B. Forsythe National Wildlife Refuge.